My name is Lloyd Bracken, and I have for many years been interested in the cosmos and its influence on human consciousness. I have with me here today Tom Cahalan, who has spent 12 years researching the origin and evolution of the universe, life, the mind and human consciousness. He has written a book called Dark Energy and Human Consciousness, and he seeks to understand the influence of the universe on human consciousness, and of course the knock-on effect and how that dictates human thinking, human behaviour and human acting. Hello Tom, I have read your book, which I found both original and insightful. I want to begin by asking you, what do you see as the fundamental cause to the world's starvation, conflict, war, and all the crisis that's taking place in the world at the moment?
Well, as I explained on this slide, the main cause of all these problems is the fact that all our political, public service, financial and religious institutions worldwide are dominated by a culture of selfishness, corruption, abuse of power and greed.
Why do you think this is so?
Well, the fundamental reason is the natural trait of selfishness that's innate in every human being.
Can you explain how selfishness in the individual ensures that our main institutions will always be dominated by selfishness, corruption, abuse of power and greed?
Firstly, in the interest of balance and fairness, it is necessary to state that there are many honest, hard-working, generous people in all walks of life. However, the significant point is that a critical mass in most societies are dominated by selfishness. Therefore, selfish individuals, especially the cunning ones who rise to the top in most institutions, can indulge in their selfish pursuits while hiding behind the bureaucracy of a faceless institution. In these situations, selfishness usually gives way to greed. And when that occurs, corruption and abuse of power will almost inevitably follow every time the opportunity presents itself.
So why is humanity finding it so difficult to rise above selfishness?
Well, to answer that question, we must first look at the present scientific view of reality and understand how it influences human consciousness. Scientists believe that about 13.7 billion years ago, the universe began with the Big Bang, that primeval explosion that brought all space and time, all matter, energy and momentum into being. This theory is based on the mindset that the universe is purely physical in nature, and therefore scientists have little option but to also regard life as a purely physical phenomenon. However, as you can see, the present scientific understanding of reality has three major disconnects, which alone should be sufficient to cast serious doubt over the integrity of the overall model. 1. There is no scientific understanding of the stuff that existed in the Planck epoch, which immediately followed the Big Bang. 2. Scientists do not understand how life emerged. And 3. There is no scientific understanding of mind. In spite of the fact that there is no scientific understanding of these three fundamental aspects of reality, incredibly, scientists still insist that life is purely a physical phenomenon. However, life is a system that exists somewhere between minimum complexity and maximum complexity, and must therefore be influenced by two forces, one pulling towards minimum complexity and one pulling towards maximum complexity. Otherwise, it could not exist.
Can you elaborate on that point?
Well, on page 33 of my book, I explain. An analogy to explain this principle is the example of a clothesline, a system for drying clothes. The clothesline requires two forces pulling in opposite directions to keep it in tension. If one of these forces is removed, then the clothesline will collapse and the clothes will fall to the ground, reaching a state of increased entropy. In a similar manner, life requires two forces pulling in opposite directions to keep tension on the system and thus keep it in existence.
What do you see as the main influences on human consciousness?
The main influences that inform human consciousness are mind, science, religion and politics. There are other sources as well, such as art, music, literature, philosophy, etc. But these are usually voluntary, while we cannot live in a society that is not influenced and controlled by politics and religion and informed by science. I should point out that even though there have been tremendous advances in science and technology over the past 200 years, and particularly over the last 50 years, human consciousness has not evolved in any meaningful way for thousands of years. The selfishness, corruption, abuse of power and greed that brought down the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago is no different to that which caused the global financial crisis in 2008.
So how does the belief that life is purely a physical phenomenon influence human consciousness?
If life is purely physical, then the natural propensity of matter is crucial to the evolution of life, mind, and human consciousness. Now, matter has a natural propensity to evolve towards lower complexity, as explained by the second law of thermodynamics and the concept of entropy.
Tom, could you explain this point in simple terms?
I give a simple analogy on page 31 of my book. A simple example of this principle is a steel pipe, which started its life as iron ore in the earth. Through processing and the expenditure of a large amount of energy, the iron ore is transformed into steel pipes, which are at a higher level of complexity than iron ore. However, the natural tendency of the pipe is to return to its original state of iron ore, which is the force behind corrosion. Therefore, if a steel pipe is left unprotected for a sufficiently long period, it will return to the iron ore state again, a state of lower complexity.
Okay, so matter has a natural propensity to evolve to lower complexity. And how does that influence human consciousness?
In terms of human consciousness, the lowest level of complexity is to offer care and compassion to the self only, which is selfishness. Examples of increasing levels of complexity are to offer care and compassion to family, society, country, and eventually to all humanity. I will elaborate on this with a few lines from my book. In other words, lower complexity equals lower inclusion and higher complexity equals higher inclusion, as the collective is a higher level of complexity than the individual. Based on this principle, it's reasonable to suggest that if human beings are purely physical, then their natural tendency is to take care of themselves rather than collective. Therefore, if life is a purely physical phenomenon, the present paradigm, which is dominated by selfishness, corruption, abuse of power, and greed, makes absolute sense. In other words, since selfishness is a natural force, it will always dominate in a human being if that human being is purely physical. And we have no choice but to accept selfishness, corruption, abuse of power, and greed as a natural phenomenon and get on with living in a world where the strongest survive and the winner takes all. What if life is not purely physical? What if there is a non-physical aspect to life?
From a scientific perspective, what do you regard as non-physical?
Scientists now estimate that the universe is made up of 4% ordinary matter, 26% dark matter, and 70% dark energy. Dark matter is gravitational and explains why galaxy clusters remain gravitationally bound. Dark energy is expansionary and is the most popular way of explaining recent observations that the universe appears to be expanding at an accelerating rate. However, scientists have no knowledge regarding the nature of dark energy or dark matter. Now, this is a sobering thought. It means that scientists only understand at most 4% of the whole. On that basis alone, I find it incredible that scientists can so definitively state that the universe and life are purely physical in nature. Therefore, to answer your question, I regard dark matter and dark energy as non-physical, which means that 96% of the whole is non-physical.
At present, there are many research projects trying to discover the natural dark energy and dark matter. For example, the CERN project in Switzerland and the LUX project in the USA. What do you think of these?
Well, that's true, Lloyd, but I believe the scientists are trying to understand dark energy and dark matter, the 96%, from the perspective of the science of the physical, the 4%, which in my opinion is a mistake. For example, I believe that particles emerge from dark matter, but dark matter is not a physical phenomenon. Therefore, we should not use the science of the physical to try to understand dark energy and dark matter.
Tom, can you explain what you mean by physical and non-physical?
Well, physical or physical universe can be defined as all forms of matter, energy, and momentum, and the physical forces, laws, and constants that govern them. On the other hand, non-physical or the non-physical universe can be defined as everything other than the physical. The non-physical can be viewed as pre-particle or pre-physical. In other words, the state that existed and still exists before elementary particles emerged.
How does this influence the scientific view of reality?
In my book, Dark Energy in Human Consciousness, I have looked at dark energy and dark matter from a non-physical perspective, and I've come up with the new scientific view of reality. I should point out that this new view of reality is consistent with all present scientific theories, with the exception of the Big Bang, which I regard as illogical. A black hole is a region in space in which the gravitational field is so powerful that nothing, not even light, can escape its pull. Scientists believe that it is the result of the deformation of space-time caused by a massive and very compact mass. I believe that a black hole is in a state of unity. In other words, everything that is drawn into a black hole is transformed by its enormous internal forces into a single essence or a state of unity. It is therefore the most logical candidate for the origin of the universe. Dark matter and dark energy then emerge from the black hole state and are the stuff that existed in the Planck epoch. The physical universe then emerged from dark matter in accordance with present scientific theory. Also, a non-physical universe emerged from dark energy in a similar way. Life is a union of the physical and non-physical. This union takes place in our DNA, where one strand is encoded by dark matter for the physical, and one strand is encoded by dark energy for the non-physical. Now, mind is an energy that is generated in our DNA in much the same way that a magnetic field is generated in an electrical coil. Before it is processed by our brain, it is unconscious, and after processing, it becomes conscious. Mind is therefore influenced by both the physical and non-physical aspects of our being.
How does this influence human consciousness?
Scientists know that dark matter is gravitational and dark energy is expansionary. Therefore, if we acknowledge and nurture the non-physical aspect of our being, it will expand our consciousness. This will bring balance to our minds and lead us from selfishness to love, care, and compassion for our fellow man. I developed this point further in my book. I believe that with continued research into dark energy and dark matter, scientists will conclude that dark energy also influences life, that dark energy is responsible for the expansion of human consciousness, and that it is the source of our love and compassion. When this time comes, science can declare that life is influenced by both the physical and non-physical aspects of our being. This reality can then be taught to our children as a scientific fact rather than a religious belief, since teaching religious beliefs in schools can be divisive. This view of reality will then seep into our political, public service, religious, and financial institutions. In a relatively short time, a critical mass of people will embrace this new view of reality, and we will be on our way to a world in which all people will be afforded love, care, and compassion. Over time, this will put an end to wars, poverty, and starvation, and will herald a new beginning for humanity. This is humanity's path to freedom from selfishness, corruption, abuse of power, greed, poverty, starvation, conflict, and war.
These are very interesting concepts, but how do you get the scientific community to endorse them?
Firstly, I would ask them to look at the two views of reality side by side and ask themselves the question, which one looks more logical? I suggest that the new view is much more realistic than the present one for the following reasons. 1, overall it looks more connected and balanced. 2, it reflects much more accurately any reasonable understanding of life, mind, and human consciousness. 3, there is a continuous interconnection between the source of the universe and human consciousness. 4, it reflects the obvious reality that everything in the universe affects and is affected by everything else. It is fully interactive. 5, the source continues to influence the universe by constantly interacting with it and renewing it on a continuous basis. And finally, it logically explains many concepts in physics that are either counterintuitive or not fully understood. For example, quantum entanglement, wave-particle duality, quantum tunneling, the inflationary period, the uniformity of CMB, and many more.
Endorsement by scientists is crucial for the acceptance of your ideas. So what are your final words to the scientific community?
Well, I ask all scientists to please consider the new scientific view of reality with an open mind. While it cannot yet be proven scientifically, logically it makes much more sense than the present scientific view, which incidentally cannot be proven either. If this new view of reality can be accepted as a real scientific possibility, it will greatly help humanity to move to a more enlightened paradigm where love, care and compassion will be afforded to every human being. With that in mind, to every scientist I say, our future is in your hands. May God bless you all.